So it is the first Sunday in a new month. It's November, and it's interdependence is the value we're going to be talking about this month. And so we have a hymn of interdependence, but it is the first in a series of hymns that Ron and I are writing together. I know, we're very excited. We'll see how it goes. And now I'll ask you to take a moment to breathe. You can take another breath. Come into this time. On this day when we gather to honor ancestors and imagine the future, in this moment, listen deeply for the sounds of the living. Listen for your own breath, for the breath of beloveds who sit beside you. Hear the sound of my voice. Listen not just with your ears, but with your whole being. Listen for your heart beating. Feel it strong inside you. Strong enough to be present here with us this morning, broken and whole and perfectly imperfect. Breathe deep into your heart and listen. So earlier this week, who went out in costume somewhere? Anyone? Okay, some folks. Many humans earlier this week went out searching for some joy, maybe a little fear, a lot of candy. Who got a lot of candy? We got so much in my house. Halloween allowed demons to appear, ghosts to come alive, princesses and fairies and superheroes to walk the streets of our towns. This is a time of year when we learn from our fear and from our searching. We learn who we are and who we are not. We experiment, we play. Maybe our costumes allow us to become more ourselves, or maybe we're glad that at the end of the day we take them off and we go back to being ourselves. Today, we woke up to bright blue, cold skies, and we are human, simply human. And today we are honoring the losses that have marked our lives and witnessing each other's grief, searching for that loving presence that holds us, and claiming pain and joy as part of our human inheritance. This morning we remember where we have come from and we dream of where we are going, and we might cry and we will smile, and we know that we can do that here. Be our whole selves, and it is safe. This is a time of year when the past and the future walk hand in hand right now in the present. Your tears are safe here, your laughter is music here, your memories are wanted here, and your love is alive here. This morning, before we send our children downstairs to their religious education time, I have a story that I want to share with you that introduces us to this value that we're exploring this month, that value of interdependence, which is basically the idea that we need each other and we need this earth that we share. We rely on each other. We rely on this planet. None of us can go it alone. That's like the fundamental definition I'm going to give you this morning for it. And this story comes from John Robert Lewis, who was a civil rights leader. He helped to organize the 1963 March on Washington. He led the first of the 3 marches from Selma to Montgomery in 1965, and later he represented the state of Georgia in the United States House of Representatives. And this is a story from his life as a boy out in the countryside of Alabama. So very different from where we are now. And it's called Walking with the Wind. So if it helps, you can close your eyes and you can try to picture the countryside in Alabama and listen to my words of this story, okay? So he wrote, about 15 of us children were outside my Aunt Seneva's house playing in her dirt yard. The sky began clouding over. The wind started picking up. Lightning flashed far off in the distance. And suddenly I wasn't thinking about playing anymore. I was terrified. Aunt Seneva was the only adult around, and as the sky blackened and the wind grew stronger, she herded us all inside. Her house was not the biggest place around, and it seemed even smaller with so many children squeezed inside. Small and surprisingly quiet. All of the shouting and laughter that had been going on earlier outside had stopped. The wind was howling now, and the house was starting to shake. We were scared. Even Aunt Seneva was scared. And then it got worse. Now the house was beginning to sway. The wood plank flooring beneath us began to bend, and then a corner of the room started lifting up. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. None of us could. This storm was actually pulling the house toward the sky with us in it. That was when Aunt Seneva told us to clasp hands. Line up and hold hands, she said, and we did as we were told. Then she had us walk as a group toward the corner of the room that was rising. From the kitchen to the front of the house we walked, the wind screaming outside, sheets of rain beating on the tin roof. Then we walked back in the other direction as another end of the house began to lift. And so it went back and forth, 15 children walking with the wind, holding that trembling house down with the weight of our small bodies. More than half a century has passed since that day, and it has struck me more than once, he writes, over those many years that our society is not unlike the children in that house, rocked again and again by the winds of one storm or another, the walls around us seeming at times as if they might fly apart. It seemed that way in the 1960s at the height of the civil rights movement, when America itself felt as it might burst at the seams. So much tension, so many storms. But the people of conscience never left the house. They never ran away. They stayed, they came together, and they did the best they could, clasping hands and moving toward the corner of the house that was the weakest. And then another corner would lift, and we would go there. And eventually, inevitably, the storm would settle, and the house would still stand. But we knew another storm would come, and we would have to do it all over again. And we did, and we still do. All of us, you and I, children holding hands, walking with the wind. Our first reading this morning is a poem by Marie Howe, and it's titled What the Living Do. Johnny, the kitchen sink has been clogged for days. Some utensil probably fell down there, and the Drano won't work but smells dangerous, and the crusty dishes have piled up waiting for the plumber I still haven't called. This is the everyday we spoke of. It's winter again. The sky's a deep, headstrong blue, and the sunlight pours through the open living room windows because the heat's on too high in here and I can't turn it off. For weeks now, driving or dropping a bag of groceries in the street, the bag breaking, I've been thinking, this is what the living do. And yesterday, hurrying along those wobbly bricks in the Cambridge sidewalk, spilling my coffee down my wrist and sleeve, I thought it again, and again later when buying a hairbrush. This is it. Parking, slamming the door shut in the cold, what you called that yearning, what you finally gave up. We want the spring to come and the winter to pass. We want whoever to call or not call, a letter, a kiss. We want more and more and then more of it. But there are moments, walking, when I catch a glimpse of myself in the window glass, say the window of the corner video store, and I'm gripped by a cherishing so deep for my own blowing hair, chapped face, and unbuttoned coat that I'm speechless. I am living. I remember you. Our second reading this morning is titled A House Called Tomorrow, and it's by the poet Alberto Rios. You are not 15 or 12 or 17. You are 100 wild centuries and 15, bringing with you in every breath and in every step everyone who has come before you. All the yous that you have been, the mothers of your mother, the fathers of your father. If someone in your family tree was trouble, 100 were not. The bad do not win, not finally, no matter how loud they are. We simply would not be here if that were so. You are made fundamentally from the good. With this knowledge, you never march alone. You are the breaking news of the century. You are the good who has come forward through it all, even if so many days feel otherwise. But think, when you as a child learned to speak, it's not that you didn't know the words. It's that from the centuries you knew so many, and it's hard to choose the words that will be your own. From those centuries, we human beings bring with us the simple solutions and songs, the river bridges and star charts and song harmonies, all in service to a simple idea that we can make a house called tomorrow. What we bring, finally, into the new day every day is ourselves. And that's all we need to start. That's all we require to keep going. Look back only for as long as you must, then go forward into the history you will make. Be good, then better. Write books, cure diseases, make us proud, make yourself proud. And those who came before you, when you hear thunder, hear it as their applause. A few weeks ago, we had a family memorial for my aunt who died this past September. I lightly officiated, but generally it was an opportunity for family to come together and share memories and stories. One of our children played the piano in her honor, one wrote a poem, and one stood up and could only manage to say, and I'll try to do it without crying, could only manage to say, I loved my Aunt Annie and I'm going to miss her. We did this, we had this coming together because it mattered. It mattered for us to have time set aside to speak, to listen, to cry together among people who understood what loss we were feeling. Rituals can help us to make sense of the world and our experiences. And so this ritual marking we do each year, this All Souls service, it does the same. It helps us make sense of the world and our experiences. It gives us a chance to feel, to allow ourselves time among others who understand why it matters, to cry, even over losses from long ago, even over losses that the world might not recognize as losses. This ritual helps us navigate the complex and ongoing nature of human loss and human grieving. When I shared with my children about my first really aware experience of loss, this was theirs this past September. When I shared about mine, it was about my maternal grandfather. He was a looming figure in our lives, the patriarch before my aunt became the matriarch. Taciturn, somewhat cold, always annoyingly early to everything. He was a man with very high expectations and very few expressions of emotion. And when he died, my grief was less about how I would miss him and more about how I felt there was a lost opportunity to know him in some different way than I did. Sometimes a beloved dies, and what we feel is relief that they are no longer suffering. Sometimes a beloved dies, and we are sad because we will truly miss the person that they were. Sometimes a beloved dies, and more than anything, we are mourning the lost possibility of the relationship we might have come to have. I've tried to explain to our children that it is complicated. What I have failed, I think, so far to teach our children explicitly is that loss and mourning and grieving are not reserved for death. We humans feel so many other kinds of losses, and honestly, I'm not actually sure that I need to teach that to my children. I think often that children know as well as any of us about losses that aren't death, right? But losses that are actually about growth, what it means to outgrow some friendships and the pain that can cause, what it means to grow so big that your grown-up can't pick you up anymore, what it means to reach that moment when you understand that you are separate from the people you once viewed as an extension of yourself. From the moment we are born, we experience loss. It is one of the defining features of being human. Experiencing loss, and more than that, knowing that we will experience loss, is a large part of what makes us human. We will know grief again and again, and loss really does come in so many forms. We know this. How many of us have experienced the loss formed by the dissonance between what we thought our lives would be and what our lives have become? How many of us have experienced the loss generated by believing ourselves to be one way in the world and having the world reflect back to us that we are not embodying what we think we are embodying? How many of us have experienced the loss that can come when our bodies and our minds change, age? As long as we are living, there will be change, and as long as there is change, there will be loss, and there will be grief. And I think that it is imperative that we learn how to lose, how to mourn, how to grieve, and how to not let our lives become stunted by loss. It's imperative that we learn how to do these things and still live and love and rejoice and laugh and take risks and be open-hearted. It's imperative that we understand what it means to remember, to honor, to celebrate our beloveds, our ancestors, those that we will miss, and still to be looking ever toward the future, knowing that one day we will be among their ranks. It's imperative that we understand what it means to feel that dissonance and honor lost hopes and dreams, and still be creating and dreaming and hoping and working for the future, knowing that we cannot abandon what is and what will be in favor of if-onlys. When we are at our best, we are looking backward for wisdom and lessons and support. We're looking backwards to understand where we have come from, who are our people, what statistically improbable set of circumstances resulted in our being, and our being right here in this moment together. When we're at our best, we are searching our individual and collective past to understand who we are and where we are and why we are. And when we're at our best, we are also looking forward to understand what we owe to the world that will be. Just as those who came before us made choices and took risks and made mistakes, creating to some degree the lives we find ourselves living, so too our choices and risks and mistakes will shape the world to come. At our best, we understand that our interdependence isn't just now, across space and relationships now, it is interdependence across time. We inherit what has been built by those who came before, and we will leave something behind to the generations that will come after. While pain and suffering are part of the human experience, we have inherited too much pain and suffering that doesn't actually need to exist. We've inherited a world of climate change, and there is a deep grief that attends to the knowledge that species will die and we are harming this planet. We've inherited a world of racism, and there's a deep grief that attends to the knowledge that we continue to diminish our fellow humans. We've inherited a world of misogyny and violence and oppression, and there is a deep grief that attends to the knowledge that we have so far to go in our attainment of equality and justice. We've inherited a world shaped by unchecked capitalism, by creeping fascism, by greed and lies, and there is a deep grief that attends to the knowledge that we so privilege the material and temporary power and the self over our interdependence. And all of that, all of this that we have inherited that doesn't have to be the way that it is, that's the stuff that has to change. And that's the stuff that we have to commit to changing in our own lives, on the internet, at the ballot box, in any sphere of influence that we possess, however we can, wherever we can. We have to work to change the inheritance that we will leave for others, working diligently to push the balance of our legacy into a net positive. We are living right here, right now, and we remember the incredible gift and power that is our living. Because the thing is, we've inherited all that yucky stuff, but we have also inherited so much wisdom. We've inherited so much grace. We've inherited so much beauty. We've inherited so much love and possibility, and we have inherited so much strength. When you think of all that happened to create you, for you to be here in this, what an impossibility that is, really. What an unbelievable gift to have this time to be human and have the chance to live and feel and create and hear music and see art. What a gift it is to have this time to try and shape the future. We owe it to what has come before, and we owe it to the generations yet to come, and to ourselves, to never get stuck in grief and stagnate there. To never freeze up and deny our capacity for growth and change. To never get so lost in our tears that we forget that rejoicing is possible. And I do not use the word owe lightly. It is a powerful word, but I believe it in this context. We owe it. We are called by our shared humanity and our shared interdependence that spans across space and time. We are called to work for change and build tomorrow. We are called to celebrate and rejoice and live and love. We are called to keep on moving forward even when hard things happen, even when we spend time in ritual looking back. And so we begin this week of national change, remembering to breathe. Please remember to breathe this week. Remembering our shared humanity. Remembering the call to hope and the future. If you find yourself struggling this week, remember that you can look back and also forward. Remember that nothing lasts forever. And I encourage you to remember the song we're about to sing. May we mark the time and meaning of our lives together each year with shared support and love. May we look to the future with a deep sense of our shared fate, and may we have the strength to keep on moving forward. So may it be. Until we are together again, whatever we face, we can face it together. Go reminded of our interdependence. Go reminded of what it is to be human. Go reminded that grief goes hand in hand with joy. Find the laughter this week, folks. Go in peace.